We live in a time where everybody has a message that they need to share, but most are never able to actually communicate it effectively in a way that gets people to listen. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
Welcome to CEOs on Video, the show to help you go from being the head of your business to the face and voice of your brand. If you're a CEO, a business owner, an entrepreneur who is involved in bringing a new business for your company, then you need to be putting out content. You are the subject matter expert in your business, and there's no one who can market it better than you can. In this show, I interview experts who are killing it online, using video, using digital media to grow their business, and we're going to show you how you can be doing the same.
My guest is Brenden Kumarasamy. He's the founder of MasterTalk, and he coaches ambitious executives around the world to become top 1% communicators in their industry. He also has a YouTube show of the same name, MasterTalk, with the goal of providing free access to communication tools for anyone in the world. Brenden, thank you so much for joining me.
RJ, the pleasure is absolutely mine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the first question I have for you is, why do you do what you do?
Absolutely. You know, communication coaching for me ended up being an accident, because how it started was I went to business school for accounting of all things. And my goal is to be an employee, not to be an entrepreneur or business owner. So I studied in accounting, and I started doing these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, RJ, but for nerds. So all the guys my age were playing baseball or basketball. I was one of those guys. I did professional sports for nerds, which means presentations competitively. And that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching a lot of the students, mostly for free back then, just to help them on communicating so they would win these competitions. And I accidentally got really good at coaching other people how to speak. And that's what led to the YouTube channel MasterTalk, because I felt that all the information I was sharing with them wasn't really available for free on the internet. So I just started making videos, and then a few years later, it turned to what it is.
That's so interesting. And also the fact that most people start, I think, the opposite of they'll start doing something as a service and then find ways to, reach new people. It's really interesting that it progressed organically of something that you just found a fit with organically, and then it broadened into a business. Am I hearing that correctly?
1000%. I had zero intention of monetizing it. It's not because I'm some saint or some philanthropist. It's because I already had a high-paying job. I was a consultant at IBM, and that's what was paying my bills. So this was purely a passion project. And I think that's why we succeeded really quickly in organic reach and on video, because the main intention was to actually add value. I didn't even know what a lead gen magnet was. I didn't even know what a CTA was. I was just pouring all of my heart into the audience, and the market spoke.
That's fascinating. You actually have a paragraph on your website that really stood out to me about that. You said that a wise friend once told you that you couldn't possibly coach every human being on earth with the limited time that you have in life. So you needed to go on video to share your message with the world. So you got over the fear, you practiced hundreds of times on camera, you're finally able to say that you were YouTube ready. A lot of people that I talk with are in that place where they want to serve more people, they want to reach more people, but they don't feel confident enough to get on camera and present in that way. Can you share just a little bit more of how you conquered that and got over that?
Love the context, RJ. Absolutely. I was super scared around getting on camera. To be quite frank, I'm not the oldest coach in the game. I started communication coaching when I was 19, and I started making videos when I was 22. And my nearest competitor has a PhD in communication, right? So I felt a lot of anxiety, and they're much older, right? Like one of my good friends on YouTube does really well for himself. He's like in his 50s. So I said, should I be the person sharing this information? Why should I do this? Why me? I didn't even have any money back then either. So I couldn't even produce my videos professionally and hire someone amazing like you to help me. I didn't have that either. So I think for me, the big piece was really two things. One is building momentum and understanding the vision. So let's start with building momentum. I actually never advocate for people to post on social media right away. I think they should. I think it's important for consultants and business owners to do that, and it gives you a unique competitive advantage in the space you're in. But that's not step one with me. That's step three. Step one for me is really just making videos for the sake of doing them, which in my opinion is simply pick 5 people you love the most in your life. People that are super open-minded, supportive, they're generous, and send them video messages just saying you're thinking about them and you're wishing them a wonderful day. Because that exercise, RJ, teaches us what communication is for. So when we send these videos, they reply and they go, wow, I never got a video message before. This really made my day. And it starts changing the way we think about video. And then step 2 is having that bigger vision and just saying, wait a second, there's a 15-year-old girl right now who can't afford a communication coach like me. What are we doing for her? And that's what fueled me to start the channel and make it successful.
I love that approach because, one, it takes the pressure off of you of feeling like you need to be perfect, or you need to, putting all of this emphasis on what am I doing, and how is this for me? How is this going to help me? And taking the pressure off. I have a message, which is the emphasis and who the message is for. And I think putting it out there without the strings attached of expectation are huge, because we do that in normal communication. When you go to develop a friendship or a relationship with someone romantically, we know that we shouldn't have expectations when we give something to someone. Like, we know that. That doesn't feel good when someone does it to us, or the only time we hear from someone is when they want something. But in business, that's the standard. We just assume that everyone wants something, and we've normalized it. So when we communicate it, it's so important to put out something that is free of expectation. And I think that's what I'm hearing you did. And I think that's just marvelous.
Absolutely. And it really comes down to something a little bit outside of communication, but one I feel a lot of small business owners don't think enough about, is think about the vision beyond your clients. Let's say you're doing a few $1 million a year in your business. All your dreams came true. Then what? Then what do you do? Money isn't going to change your life. It might change money problems, but then what do you do from a vision perspective? And I think what I got right was I really thought about the vision beyond my clients. And I think that's why a lot of people wanted to work with me, because the reason I started this channel, these videos, and creating content in the first place was my thought was, okay, well, if nobody's sharing this content for free, the next Elon Musk also can't afford a communication coach, because Elon was in South Africa when he was born. He couldn't go to like a coach in the US and spend thousands of dollars. But if we're empowering those kids to be really good early, then it could really change the course of humanity. And that's really what drove me to get there a lot faster, and what really made our organic reach very successful.
I love a lot of things about that, but the intangible, somewhat counterintuitive piece is that not focusing on the metrics of business in those decisions is what makes business go faster. When it's this big picture outcome and you're not micromanaging all of the inputs and outputs and, well, I'll do this and expect X out of it in return. It's hilarious how it often plays out that things will just happen.
Correct. And bringing this more back to a business conversation, now that I've learned how to do this and how to sell leads and build a business for myself so I could do this full time. That's why I quit my job last year to do this full time, and things have been going fine. It's a quote by Sharan Srinivasta, who's a very successful entrepreneur. He says this. He says, fame is the most efficient business model. So what does that mean? That means that if you create video content, to your point, and people work with you and people get on calls with you, they actually come on the call as a fan. So you're not cold calling people anymore. They sit there and they go, oh my God, it's RJ. Like, I love your podcast. So your conversion rate skyrockets because they already trust you, right? So it's not a question of saying like, who are you? What's your product? I don't really get a lot of those questions. Sure, some people I do, but the only reason I get those questions is because they haven't seen me. They saw me in some ad and they get on a call with me. And always when these conversations happen, I go, hey, I'm not trying to sell you. Have you been to my YouTube channel? Have you been to my free trainings? And they go, no. Why don't you start there and we'll get on a call next week? And then they have a completely different energy next week. They go, wow, this is so good. And that's really the point. You're absolutely right. Especially in service-based businesses, I really believe that the most generous person wins over time.
I agree. Because the watching what happened over the last, really the last few decades, but the last 5-10 years, really where the rise of influencers and gurus, and we've all seen it now. Like, we know what a sales funnel is. People are well aware of the gimmicks and the moves that people have of, if I give my email here for a product that's $3, I know for a fact in half an hour I'm going to be pitched for something that's, $2,000, because we know how it works. But if you can get something of tremendous value without pressure, without commitment or prior obligation, and then they get you to a point where it's a natural progression to work with them. Like what you're doing with YouTube is exactly the move that everybody should be doing. Of, there are plenty of people who need what you do, but aren't in a position to work with you directly and to make what you need to charge for the economics to make sense. But if you help them get there, who are they going to work with? If you have helped them to an extent for free and help them sell more, or increase their confidence or whatever, get them to a level where it does make sense to work with you, they're not going to suddenly price shop when they get there. That's just not how we operate. They already trust you intrinsically.
That's correct. And I think another reason why business owners don't do that, you're absolutely on the money there, RJ, is because they do not think about the version of who they will be 10 years from now. So let's say when I was 22 and I started MasterTalk, I always thought about what 32-year-old Brenden would think. Because 32-year-old Brenden would say, like, why are you slacking? Why aren't you posting on YouTube every week? If you just do it for 10 years, you'll be number one in this industry. Because there's nobody who's a communication coach in the early 20s who's already signed a bunch of CEOs. So if you just not get distracted, if you don't be selfish, you stay focused on the organic reach, you stay focused on adding value, you give your best 10 out of 10 every time you're on a podcast, eventually the chips will play out. And that guy's in his $7 million house. He's making, $10 million a year. And he's looking at me and he's saying, and now it's 36-year-old Brenden, he's going, you need to stay the course. Whereas what a lot of us, we do as business owners is we're focused on the next sale. We're focused on the next transaction, which is important. But I would encourage people to spend 20% of their time at the bare minimum to think about who they will be 10 years from today. And this is a great question I got from one of my mentors, Jason Skisek. And he says this: if the future version of yourself had an opportunity to look into how you're living your life today, what would they disagree with you on and why? And this opens the truth, which is we already know what you should be doing, except we choose not to.
Wow. When you dig into that and really envision, it can be uncomfortable. There's a strong sense of discomfort when we know the actions we should take. We know what's good for us. We know what's good for our health, or to take our business to a new level. We generally know. Information isn't the problem, but rooting it in, what am I going to think? Who would the person that I become, what are they going to think of me? And I think that mentality is just it's a flip from what most people do, because the key behind that is actually acting on it, not just putting it on your vision board and saying you want the $7 million house. This isn't an affirmations game. It's a working, figure out where you're headed and work backwards, because it's the actions today that get you there.
1000%. That's why I always say, for anybody who asks me about YouTube advice, I always go 520 to win. And they said, what do you mean 520 to win? I go, well, if you post a really good long form video piece of content once a week for the next 10 years, you'll win on YouTube, because that's 52 weeks a year, 10 years, except most people aren't willing to do that. And that's what happened with me. The first, it took me 2.5 years, RJ. I've been on the platform for almost 4 years now, right? So it took me 2.5 years to get my first 10,000. But after I passed 10,000, now it's moving really, really fast. Now I'm getting maybe 800 to 1,000 subscribers a month for basically doing the same work that I was doing in year one. And that's really the point I want to drive. It's just most people don't think about their channels, or it's not even about YouTube. Think about their video content, LinkedIn, right? They don't think about it like that. Same thing with me. Like, I'm already, and we could talk about that if it's interesting for your viewers, but like, I'm already done my daily posting schedule for LinkedIn for 2023. I'm already done. So my team and I are already working on writing 2024 right now. Because when you optimize that system, you're creating a bunch of videos. It's just impossible for your competitors to compete with you because you're just too consistent to lose.
Hey there, I hope this is valuable to you. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. I just wanted to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Evoke Media Labs, a video marketing and podcast production company that helps B2B companies, service-based businesses, expert entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants create video content that will drive attraction, drive leads, drive conversions in their business. You know, if that's something that you'd like to talk about, shoot us a message, go to evokemedialabs.com and set up a call with someone on our team, and we'll put together a custom strategy for your business. And if we're able to help, we'll offer that as a suggestion, but if we can't, we will find someone who can. Now, again, that is Evoke Media Labs. Go check it out, and we hope to hear from you soon. Now back to the episode.
I do want to dig into that because I think there's a lot of people who are like, I'm just trying to figure out today. Like, if I can do it a week at a time, I'm like crushing it. And if someone has for the month, like, they're a superstar. But the fact that we are not even to the end of this year, and we're now 14 months ahead, with room in there, I imagine, for, you know, the more in the moment, top of mind, you know, your insight from today, or you can add additional content to that mix, but now you've got your baseline already set. Your threshold of activity is now met, and now everything above is just an addition, which is a very different point from a media standpoint than if you're just trying to get something together.
Absolutely, RJ. Happy to dive into that. So the idea here, let's start with the mistake that business owners make. This is after you're comfortable on video. You start posting, you're comfortable posting. This is a little bit more advanced. But for those of you who are there and you're ready to create content, you are, but the problem is now the second challenge, consistency. You're not able to do it consistently enough. Here's what I'll say. You need to automate your content in the same way you would automate a system or a process in your business, where you don't have to think about it anymore. So a lot of people always tell me, and I love that you added the nuance before I even had to mention it, which is, Brenden, well then how do you create content that's going to live in the now versus that's evergreen, which for the audience just means content that lasts for long periods of time. And my answer is always who cares about current events? You got a business to run. The business will be the same this year. It'll be the same next year. Your ideal customer will ask the same questions this year and the same questions in 5 years. Maybe the only difference is Web3 and the metaverse. Maybe they'll ask questions in that world. But, you know, the questions will stay the same, RJ. So for me, here's what I would say, because I don't want to intimidate people too much, because I'm pretty nuts. Like I'm already finished, done, like 2024 for YouTube. I'm like a few months. I have like 30 more days and I'll be done that year. And I'll be producing it this year. So I'm like 12, 18 months ahead of my content schedule. But I don't want that to intimidate people, because my advice is never to start like that. My advice is actually really simple, which people can write down. Post once, create twice. Post once, create twice. What does that mean? Let's say you post every day on LinkedIn. Simple. Okay. Simple to say, hard to do. But let's say you post every day on LinkedIn. But every day, because writing on LinkedIn is not that hard. It's like a 1-minute video and you're creating some copy. So it might take you an hour tops. But let's say for argument's sake, you create 2 posts, but you only post 1. And you do the same thing the next day. So you post once again, but you create 2 posts. But if you just do that every day for 6 months, you'll already be 6 months ahead of your content strategy. And the reason is because if you make 2 content pieces for 6 months, that's 360 posts, but you only posted 180 of them. But if you do that for a year consistently, post once, create twice, you'll be a year ahead of your content strategy. And now, if you're posting anywhere less than once a day, like twice a week, 3 times a week, and you still create 2 posts a day, my goodness, you'll be 5-7 years ahead of your posting schedule. It's just most people, and this is the conclusion, they're not willing to do just a little bit more than everyone else. But if you're the person that does, you're able to reap in the rewards that nobody else doesn't get.
That's brilliant, first of all. But when you say, you know, post once, create twice, I assume what I'm getting out of that is you're taking whatever question you might be answering or, you know, subject you're discussing, and it's going to be very similar content, but you're mixing it up a little bit. You're changing up your messaging, you're changing up maybe the copy of the same video, or slightly, you know, small tweak to that video, Or are you recording twice around the same subject and only keeping one for the moment and archiving the other?
That's correct. And let me make it even more juicier for you, RJ, because I can feel the excitement. So let me give you the framework on how I create content too, which is a framework I teach my private clients called QIT. QIT. So what does QIT stand for? Questions, insights, and titles. And this works perfectly for consultants, coaches, service-based business owners too, or people who just create educational how-to videos, which is what I do. That's my specialty. Q starts with questions. Make a list of all of the questions that your top prospects and clients ask you, your favorite ones. So start with the clients you adore. That's the ranking. So go to the first, let's say John's your favorite client. Go to John and say, what are your top 20 questions? Because you want more people like John. And then, or Lacey, it doesn't matter. And then you make a list of all those questions. Then we go to I, which stands for insights. So then what you do is every day you answer one of those questions in a Word document. So I literally open a Word document. The Word document is titled that question. Brenden, how do I present in a second language? Brenden, how do I overcome my fear of communication? Brenden, how do I practice communication effectively every single day? So I don't do this every day, but I do it most of the time, where I'll sit down with myself for 45 minutes and I'll just write out the answer, which is I for insights. And T is just titling the video or the content that specifically reaches out to the person who has that question. Very simple. How do you present in a second language? Just turns into how to present in a second language, and that's QIT.
That's fantastic. Thank you for breaking that down, because I know that hangs up a lot of people of wanting to communicate a message, but lacking sometimes the confidence to do it, which often comes from a lack of framework of how to package it. And I think once you have those pieces in place, it becomes a game of repetition, which if you can stay consistent, using a framework like this, it increases your confidence over time. So when you look at entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, what are the mistakes that you see them making most often, and how do they fix them?
For sure, RJ. We already talked about one of them, which is really around how do you package the information you're creating on social media in a way that attracts your ideal client. So QIT really helps us with that. I'm sure you got a bunch of frameworks you teach in other episodes, but it's pretty much the same thing. Like just making sure that your content is specifically related to the person you're attracting, and then you get the results you're looking for. That's one piece. The other mistake, to be honest, is just consistency. I think the problem, and we call this the law of 100 that I got from Noah Kagan, which is essentially just if you're not willing to do 100 of anything, you won't get the results. So for me, my first year on YouTube, I wrote it off as an expense. Like it wasn't about, hey, I'm going to be a big YouTube star in the first year. I'm literally, just to make sure we're on the same page here, I'm literally in my mother's basement with the phone, with no money. I still haven't invested a dime into YouTube, and I'm just going, hi guys, welcome to MasterTalk. And for the people who don't believe me, go watch my first video. It's all up there. And that's it. Like the first year is just a write-off. I'm just practicing to be good on camera. I'm trying to get to 100 as quickly as possible. So I was doing that, making a video every week, which is 52 videos. And you know what? I was actually so bad at editing, RJ. People don't know this. I actually had to one take the video because I really didn't want to edit it. So let's say I'm doing a 13-minute video. At minute 7, if I messed up, I would literally start all the way back from the beginning, which I don't do anymore, obviously, because my team just takes care of that stuff. But the point is then I would start again. And then when it was 13, then I would be done. So I was literally repeating the same 15-minute video like 4 times. It was insane. And then the other piece was every day I would post on Instagram stories. I call this the thought experiment. So literally, remember, I'm a kid, right? So if I could do this, anyone listening to this podcast can do this. That's the frame that I always like to teach from, is if I can do it, why can't you? So I'm literally in my basement 4 years ago, and I have a thought. That's why I call it the thought experiment. Oh, like I have a thought about like surrounding yourself with winners. So I literally sit down on my mattress. I would open my phone. Hey guys, Brenden here. So my daily insight is around surrounding yourself with winners. And I would just talk about 45 seconds, and I would just do that every day to get the reps and get the results.
That's a big one, because in that environment, if you're still in a place where you don't feel really comfortable in your ability to present on camera, that gives you a little bit of air cover, right? Of if you screw up or it's not a great clip, it's gone in in 24 hours. You have only a very short window that you need to kind of live through it. And I think that can take a lot of pressure off of, if I post this on YouTube, it might be around for forever, versus, giving yourself an area where you're getting uncomfortable, but not mounting pressure on yourself. And I think that was brilliant.
I mean, that was brilliant. I actually learned something from you there, RJ. I never thought of it that way. You're right. It does remove a lot of anxiety because for me, the reason I recommend story, it's just easy for people to do. But the way you phrase it is actually encourages people to do it more. So I'll definitely take that from you.
Perfect. You mentioned something else earlier. You've said it a few times of when you first got started, and even now, still, I imagine most rooms that you go into, virtual or otherwise, you're not exactly the oldest in the room. You don't have decades of experience.
Correct.
You don't have degrees, across your wall. You don't have massive awards, probably. So for those who are looking at themselves, I would like to do this. I see the value. I get it, but I'm not credible. I'm not an expert. Who am I to share anything as though I know something? What do you say to them?
Let me start with this, RJ. The reason I'm so competent in that topic, which is really imposter syndrome, that's what you're really driving the home towards, is, look, I'm the king of imposter syndrome. I started coaching when I was 19. I do have 7 years of experience now, so it's not as bad as it used to be. But I coach people, even today, my average client is 20 years older than I am. Not my age. Most of the people are senior level executives at companies. So it was really intimidating because back in the day, I would literally help people who would work longer in the company than I was alive. So what do I know that they somehow don't? So here's what I would say, and I'll tell it through a story, okay, to make this really simple. So let's say I came to Michigan, which is where you're based, and I said, "Hey, RJ, I'm in the state," or let's say you live in Detroit, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm in Detroit. What should I do in the city?" You'll probably tell me if you live there. You'd be like, "Oh, go to this restaurant, go to this attraction. Oh, you got to visit this zoo. You got to do something." Would that be fair to say?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. In the same way that, let's say you come to Montreal, which is where I'm based, and you go, "Hey, Brenden, I heard you live in Montreal. What should I do in the city?" I'll probably tell you, "Oh, go to this restaurant, go to this attraction, RJ, go spend time." Doesn't that feel weird though? Isn't that odd? Because we're not tour guides. Like, are you certified by Yelp or TripAdvisor to give advice on where to go in your city? Is my dad the mayor of Montreal? Like, no. Yet,
Right.
we share it. But there's other pieces of information that we're an expert in, that we actually spend time honing, that we think to ourselves, "Oh, I'm not ready for this." So the question now, RJ, becomes, why is there a disconnect between some pieces of information in our mind where we don't even consider whether we're credible? We don't even think about it. "Oh, yeah, just go to this restaurant." We don't even ask ourselves if we're credible. And then other piece of information where we go, "I'm not ready." And what this boils down to is what you said. What does being an expert even mean? A lot of people think expertise is a master's degree and a PhD, whereas for me, expertise just means you're one step ahead of the next person in that thing. In the same way you could teach me about Detroit or Michigan, I could teach you about communication. And that's the punchline. And Ali Gadet says it best: if you help one person, the world will give you permission to help everyone else. So start with that one person.
That's fantastic. I like that quote a lot. And it's true in the sense of we elevate the assumption that we need to be an expert, like the foremost expert, which is completely ridiculous. Most people do not need the foremost expert. They just need someone to help them. And you don't need to be the most knowledgeable to help someone through a problem. Just having enough credibility or experience that you believe you can help them is usually enough to try. And that takes courage, especially I was in the same spot as you many times, of being a kid, fresh out of college, and running into meetings, and you could just see it. People think that you're there to make some beer money, or what could you possibly know to speak on business or on marketing or communication or life experience in general. But you work through that, and rather than letting it be your permission to not try, let it be the the journey and the story that you get to share that you overcame.
I love the way you phrased that. And I agree. I think it's really that idea of embracing it, not just for ourselves. That's why I always say behind every why, there's a who. Who is that person that you're meant to serve? And for me, that who is really solid. It was the 13-year-old girl I always saw when I volunteered and helped kids out for free back then. And I would always see their red faces, how nervous they were about speaking. And I asked myself, and I got really frustrated, what are the other communication coaches doing in my industry about these people? And the truth is that they don't care about those people as much as I did, because you can't make money off kids. Yeah, I can't build a sustainable business coaching kids. It doesn't make sense. I have to coach executives. It's a lot easier. But even if we're making money with our executives and our entrepreneurs and our CEO clients, what are we doing for society to help the people, like Dale Carnegie did when he was alive, to just help people in general? And that's when I realized that nobody was thinking that way except for me. So I felt it was a personal responsibility. Even if I make mistakes along the way, and I made a ton of them, I still do, right? That, hey, wait a second. No. I need to keep getting better. So I become that person for her, because she won't relate to the 55-year-old PhD communication guy. She'll only relate to me. So it's either I make the videos or no one does. So because I have that strong why, I executed like crazy, and I was able to get to the level of success I have, thankfully, in business, but also in my content. And I wish the same for everyone else.
That's an outstanding place to wrap up. I think that's, if you only heard anything in this episode, if you only take that away, I think let it be that. Brenden, thank you so much for coming on, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, Archie. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of CEOs on Video. I hope you got something valuable from it. If you liked this episode of CEOs on Video, be sure to let us know by giving us a follow. Leave us a rating on Apple Music. It would mean the world to us. So let us know what you like, what you didn't, and if there's anything that we can do to help you, be sure to reach out. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on the next one.